Raging forest fire, Mother Nature unleashing her fury. Hello everyone, I'm Heidi Fogelsong. As the Dude Fire charred our beautiful Mogollon Rim, it left a lasting impression on those whose lives it touched, bringing families, neighbors, and entire communities together in the spirit of cooperation and determination. We here at News Channel 3 have put together this special presentation of our extensive coverage of the Dude Fire. It's a tribute to all those who endured this tragedy. One more reason we're all proud to be part of Arizona's family.
You could see them over here.
Tons of them!
The summer of 1990 started like most on the Mogollon Rim. Families fishing on rim lakes or taking in the beauty of its ponderosa pines. The forests weren't as green this year. The last 2 winters had been dry. Not enough snow fell to moisten the land. Fire danger was high. On Monday, June 25th, Jay Dial saw the monsoon coming from his Tonto National Forest lookout tower. He knew that it would bring lightning, and lightning could bring fire.
We had some lightning in that day, and from what I heard on the radio, there was only 2 strikes up there in that canyon.
The lightning struck near Dude Creek, and the Dude Fire was born. Dial spotted it around noon.
Just watching it come over that ridge and then seeing it spot out anywhere from a quarter to half a mile out ahead of itself, you just see trees explode like a Roman candle each time a tree went up. It looked like fireworks on the 4th of July.
When News Chapter 3 pilot Jerry Clifton and I first spotted the fire, flames were already racing 100 feet into the air, and the air attack was underway.
Lead 1 to Tonto air attack. This time
the lead plane glides into huge slurry bombers so that they can drop their load where they can do the most good.
Okay, right on the money, guy.
But since everything here underneath the rim is bone dry, this fire didn't even slow down.
Okay, it looks like it's going to get into these little finger drainages, and if it gets a good start in one, it's going to go to the top.
And that's exactly what it did. Catch the wind and head up the rim. While the slurry bombers kept dropping fire retardant, residents in the Bonita Creek area 5 miles away kept an eye on the fire, hoping it wouldn't come their way, and watching as the battle from the air continued.
We want to be just outside the smoke. It's kind of bumpy in there.
The sun set, raising hopes that the fire would calm down. Cooler temperatures and higher humidity at night tend to take the heat out of a blaze. Fires, like people, lay down at night.
See you back at the ranch, I guess.
The radio traffic was of slurry bomber pilots calling off the fight due to darkness. It's hoped that the still damp air tonight will slow down the fire, but there was a lot of room for worry.
Yeah, we're going to have to go over to Albuquerque pretty soon if we don't get this sucker slowed down.
I think it's a pity.
Back at the Payson airport, people gathered to quietly watch the fire eat up some of Arizona's most beautiful country.
It makes me feel real sad because we go camping and fishing up there, and it's a shame to see it all destroyed.
Because the rim country is so dry, there is a possibility that the fire could work its way the 3 miles to the Bonita Springs subdivision.
Yeah, if we get the strong north winds like we had earlier today, then there's quite a few subdivisions scattered along there that could be a problem tomorrow.
It was like somebody had dropped an orange curtain, a brilliant orange curtain, and you couldn't see through it. You could barely hear yourself talking. The wind, it makes the noise like a locomotive.
It was more like a runaway train. Waves of flames recklessly rolled through the pines all day Tuesday, claiming the lives of 6 members of the Perryville prison fire crew. Corrections officer Larry Terra managed to escape with his life.
Well, when I had heard initially that I had lost 2 crew members, and one of them being Sandy Bachman, I remember I physically fell to the ground to my knees and I began crying.
Heidi, it has been a long, sad day up here on the Mogollon Rim. This fire seems to have a mind of its own, and as you said, it's already eaten up close to 5,000 acres up here. Firefighters keep fighting this fire, and today 6 of those firefighters paid the ultimate price. On the front line of this blaze, more than 1,000 firefighters fought throughout the day, trying to bring flames under control and save homes.
But during the day, the homes fell, and then the worst news of all.
About 3:30, we were notified that there were 2 fatalities. About 10 till 4, we were notified that there were 4 additional fatalities.
There's no time for these firefighters to mourn right now, for the fire caught more winds and kept coming.
The fire actually burned 4 directions at once.
But even as they worked, these men and women know the dangers and try to take care of one another.
Oh, definitely. It's got to be a brotherhood. We got to look after each other.
You know, that's our job, and we do the best we can and play the game as safe as we can. And it happens every year, and you just hope it's no one you know and it's not you. And
The Department of Corrections later confirmed that a wall of flames took the lives of 5 inmate firefighters and their supervisor. 4 other inmates were injured, one of them in critical condition.
The most seriously injured of the 5 firefighters was flown in late this afternoon with burns over 40% of his body. He was also on a ventilator because he apparently inhaled both smoke and fire. And tonight, that firefighter is clinging to life.
The problem will be both. He has a significant total body third-degree burn, and he looks like he had a significant amount of fire in his face, has some singed hair, some burned skin around the mouth, and so he may actually have inhaled superheated air and actually burn his lungs, and that may be the most significant problem.
No names have been released, but we do know that 4 of the 5 injured firefighters, including the one that was hurt the worst, are state prison inmates who were on a crew out of the Perryville prison. We met several of these men just 2 weeks ago in Prescott at the Iron Springs fire, and they told us then that they were finally involved in something they could believe in.
I've done 18 years in prison, and this is the only time, this is the only program, this is the only time I've ever done anything constructive. So, you know, I got nothing but, you know, this is the best program that ever happened for me or for anybody else that I've seen.
For James Denny, the program that changed his life took his life. He and fellow inmates Alex Contreras, Joseph Chacon, Curtis Springfield, and James Ellis, who would have been released from prison the following week, perished in the blaze, along with corrections officer Sandra Bachman. The area was not considered dangerous. Not far from where that crew died, the fire had trapped a Phoenix News photographer.
You could hear it sound like a train. You hear this whooshing sound, and all of a sudden, everything was fire. We were terrified. I mean, in 10 years of doing this, it really changes the way you think in a hurry. I think our chances of survival were small.
The fire that had killed showed no signs of mercy.
It took only a matter of minutes for the fire to nearly double its size. 1,800 acres had burned as of mid-afternoon. Then a brief thunderstorm whipped up the blaze. Suddenly, the land charred jumped to 3,000 acres. 1,000 firefighters did their best to battle back the flames, but to no avail. The number of communities evacuated jumped from 1 to 6, and tonight, another, Beaver Valley, has been told to prepare for evacuation. Forestry officials say this is already the largest fire ever on the Mogollon Rim, and admit it may double in size yet again to 6,000 acres before it can be brought under control.
That's the biggest fear I have is fire anyway.
Gila County Deputy Bill Lee faced his fear head-on. At 1 a.m. Wednesday morning, he began evacuating residents in the fire's path. His efforts to make sure everyone got out safely put his own life in danger.
That I could actually see the fire, and I could hear it rolling. I could see the embers coming off the fire, and they were landing near the road. And the ash, it was like it was snowing. And having a fire at the same time.
"2 a.m. Residents of Tonto Village and Coles Ranch awakened to sirens and flashing lights.
I just put my family out of here, and we're getting everybody else out of here.
I'm trying to take my photos and the most important papers, and that's it. We got a 58 Mustang over there. We've got to get somebody to hook up and get it out of here for us.
6-2 to 5-2. Be advised, I got a subject said a little guy in a little Datsun truck or whatever went back to go on the 29 road back there. He hasn't come back out. Okay.
We come from California. We always wanted to live here because this is our stomping grounds when we were younger and that. But I guess maybe that wasn't to be. I don't know.
You trying to pack everything up?
Oh, not everything. No, just get this unhooked and get out of here. That's all.
Where are you going to go tonight?
I don't know.
An uncommon sight at an unusual time. Traffic backed up in the middle of the night on the dirt roads of the Mogollon Rim. The fire had tripled in size overnight, from 5,000 to 15,000 acres, literally racing through the forest land a mile a minute. Evacuations continued throughout the day.
But as the families leave Tonto Village with their belongings, a dozen or so firefighters stay behind. Their job is to face down and, if possible, beat back the advancing flames.
We'll start pre-treating the fuels with foamed water and start treating all the area. And we'll just keep on applying water until it gets too close, and then we'll drop back into this area and our safety zone, and we'll just wait it out here then.
This will be the second day in a row some of these men have come face-to-face with the flames. Their charred fire truck is a badge, certifying their survival of the very same firestorm that killed 6 others just inches away from them yesterday.
The fire just went over the top, and they were backing the truck down, and as they were coming down the hill, one of the guys that was backing them out just said, "Screw it, leave the truck here," and they just took off running.
By the end of Wednesday, the fire had gobbled up 21,000 acres of pine. Tired firefighters returned to base camp to grab some sleep. Even the fire decides to lay down for the night.
The night sky northeast of Payson is lit by the unwelcome beacon of fire. This hillside inferno is just the most visible of the 17,000 acres on fire tonight.
Some places it was a real success today, and other places we still had lots of problems with fire behavior and just was not able to slow it down.
Residents of Tonto Village and Coles Ranch were evacuated this afternoon, as the fire seemed almost certain to descend on them. Luck was on their side, though. Those 2 communities were spared. But the 7-mile-long, 2.5-mile-wide wall of fire, which claimed 6 human lives yesterday, appears to have burned away an important piece of Arizona history today.
Same great cabin, I believe, has burned, and other surrounding cabins in the area were burned down.
With only 2,000 newly involved acres tonight, it appears that the fire's exponential growth may be slowing. But the Forest Service says we're not out of the woods yet.
Is there any hope for control or containment of this fire tomorrow?
No, not tomorrow. We're probably looking, if things go well, probably by this weekend, maybe, if everything goes well in the next few days.
Until then, residents would have to wait patiently for the fire to settle down.
But for these people, settling down was impossible. They all have homes along Tunnel Creek Road, and it was closed.
Well, it's kind of frustrating. I'd like to get in and just see if the place is still there, first of all.
John Hammond and his brother came up to check on their cabin, which has been in the family since 1945. But with fire along both sides of the road, no one other than firefighters were allowed in, and they had to clear their own path.
Let's get this thing out of the road.
These hotshots from the state of Washington came in this evening.
It's burning a lot of folks' homes, but we're here to put it out, and we're glad to come and do it. And
as people waited for any kind of news, they hoped for the best.
I have so many dreams so threatened.
1,000 people had left their homes as the fire knocked at their doors. They stayed with friends or family or wherever they could find shelter, wondering and worrying about what they had left behind.
It was about 2 o'clock this morning that we first met Dick and Pat Watson. They had just been told to get out because of the advancing flames. Tonight, they're safe and sound at the home of some very close friends, and they made it with only their most precious possessions, like wedding pictures and this wooden owl which was carved by their son.
About 3 years ago, he made it for us for Christmas. And this is something that our daughter made, and so we didn't grab everything out of the house, but I did grab things that the kids were important to us because our children made them.
The Watsons also brought their animals with them, including 3 good-looking dogs. That makes 6 looking for attention in the house, but Lyle Ferguson says that's okay.
That's what Payson is all about. It's a great, loving community.
You were saying just at your church alone, you came up with 51 homes?
51 families have opened their homes up to anyone that needs it, yes.
Those people not staying with friends or family found shelter through the Red Cross Evacuation Center at the Payson Junior High School. Elsie Drexler and May Manning came here yesterday, and even though they had an hour and a half to get out of their cabin, they still forgot some important items.
We're sharing nightgowns.
But they did remember.
Well, with medication, and naturally our cologne.
Toothpaste and a toothbrush.
Right.
That was it.
That was about it, and then we came out. Oh, knitting to fill in the time.
Oh, you did get your knitting.
Oh, yes, we did. We got that
I
done.
feel better about that.
At the Department of Corrections, it had been a somber day. Employees wore black bands around their badges, mourning the 6 that had died battling the blaze the day before. One member of that crew was still battling for his life.
He was rushed to Maricopa Medical Center with severe burns on his face, arms, and legs. 27-year-old Jeffrey Hatch was one of the Perryville prison inmates who volunteered to participate in the firefighting work program.
Said he felt like he was doing something worthwhile and that it put meaning into his life.
Just 2 weeks ago, the inmates were fighting a forest fire near Prescott. They earned 50 cents an hour for this work. But this time, battling the blaze near Payson, many of Jeff's fellow inmates lost their lives. And if Jeff recovers, his mother believes he and the others who survived should be released from prison.
I think they've served their dues to society. When you compare the thousands of dollars that the society has saved by them going out and fighting those fires at 50 cents an hour, I think that they have paid their debt.
Judith Hatch says many people forget that prison inmates are human beings. Jeff has a younger brother and a mother who believe in him and pray he will make it.
I want to hug him, and I can't. But one day soon I will.
The fire had greedily gone through 24,000 acres of the beautiful rim country without respect to life, land, or property, not even history. An aerial inspection confirmed the cabin of Western novelist Zane Grey had burned to the ground.
The forest was shady, cool, full of sunlight and beauty. Nothing but fire or lumbermen could ever rob it of its beauty, silence, fragrance, and of its temple-like majesty. The thief had come and robbed the sights and smells Zane Grey wrote of so many years ago. Even the cabin he lived in, reduced to ash and rubble, only history remains.
This is the only cabin that Zane had left other than one on the Rogue River in Oregon, a little fishing cabin, but this was the biggest favorite place.
Before the fire destroyed the cabin, Mel Counselor used to give tours much like this one, sharing stories of Zane Grey and his mountain retreat. Grey came here in the 1920s to hunt with his friend and guide, Babe Haught, proudly displaying trophies of those hunts throughout the cabin.
There was a big elk right up above his fireplace, and deer heads and bear skins on the floors.
This was more than a hunting cabin. It was a place to write novels celebrating the mountain men and Indians who tamed the Wild West. Grey wrote 14 novels in the 9 years he lived here. He spun those tales on a lapboard. It's gone now.
And the couch and the rockers and the Morris chair that he wrote in, with the lapboard, everything. There was no way to get it out.
And while the heat of the fire destroyed nearly everything left behind, it breathed new life into a well gone dry.
And kids would come up here, families, and they'd pump on that thing, and nothing would come out of it until after this fire happened, and then it started pumping water.
There may be a lesson in that, a lesson Zane Grey wrote about years ago. Nothing is lost, so the beauty and saving thought is, maybe all rock and wood, water and blood and flesh are resolved back into the elements, to come to life somewhere, sometime again.
The shady forest will come to life again, but for now the scent of the smoke replaces the pine, a reminder of the fire that robbed Mother Nature of some of her beauty and some of the history of the Old West.
And it won't be the same cabin, but it'll look like it did.
The acreage loss jumped to 21,000 by Thursday morning. The fire was heading east and moving fast.
The good news at this point is that firefighters feel they've got a pretty good containment on 3 sides of the fire. But the bad news is over here on the eastern end, when the fire is running up an area called Turkey Ridge. Now, apparently there are a lot of trees up there that have been logged and not picked up. So that whole area up there is just absolutely ripe for this fire to keep burning for miles. So far, they're telling us about 22,000 acres have burned out here so far. Now, personally, I've been on forest fires for almost 13 years here in Arizona, and this is the worst I've ever seen. And everyone you talk to agrees that this has got to be the worst ever. This is what the fire looks like as it burns about 1.5 miles from Cole's Ranch. It's absolutely awesome to see the power and the rage in this forest fire. And if the intense heat and flames aren't enough of a problem, the wind has been a major factor today, first sending the flames racing in one direction and then suddenly reversing field. And at this point tonight, there's no way of even knowing when this fire can be stopped. At roughly 22,000 acres, the Dude Fire is much larger than all of South Mountain. And despite the heroics of 1,600 firefighters, the flames are still running wild on the eastern end. Helicopters have helped, but even their efforts are dwarfed by the magnitude of this fire. This huge plume of smoke billowed up to 30,000 feet this afternoon. Airliners fly just above that, and with the heat and the smoke and the wind, this fire is literally creating its own weather.
The heat caused by the fire and any kind of different temperature that it reaches was generally cooler than it is. It causes an updraft or a downdraft, and the winds catch that. The big blowout we had here night before last started with just a bunch of little dust devils around.
Fire crews felt that they had made a lot of progress overnight, but the daytime winds have kept the flames running. And today, firefighters are looking at the Dude Fire in almost human terms.
It's sure the nastiest thing I've seen in a long time. They call it the Dude Fire, and a lot of people here are calling it the mean Dude Fire, and some of the folks that have been up on the line are calling it the real bad Dude Fire. And it's still going.
While crews worked to control the eastern edge, others checked the damage to the west, where the fire had torn through the Bonita Creek subdivision.
Down this road, the community of Bonita Springs, about all that's left of it now, these charred mailboxes. This area was truly the hottest and most dangerous part of the fire. Heavy equipment caught up in the fire's path was literally melted, and the ground was littered with fire shields used by firefighters caught in the smoke and heat.
2 days since the inferno ravaged the area, it finally had cooled down enough to go in and see what, if anything, had slipped through the fire's deadly hands.
Until this week, Bonita Creek was heaven on earth. Now it's more like hell on the moon. Of the 52 homes that were here Tuesday afternoon, only 5 still exist.
I'm standing in what was someone's living room until 2 days ago, but now look at it. This was all done by the Dude Fire, but it looks as though a bomb hit it.
They didn't just kind of little fingers of flame lick and build up. I mean, it just whomp, and it was burning all at once.
But if you walk through Bonita Creek, not everything is blackened or reduced to ash. There are sounds and signs of life, survivors of nature's holocaust. Put simply, the fire played favorites. In one step, you can go from charred earth to green grass.
Fire burns in a mosaic. You don't burn everything.
In fact, just across the street from the ruins of this house, this one stands nearly perfect, though the owners will have to replace their melted hummingbird feeder. And once they're allowed back in, they will have to watch for signs of a rebirth of this blaze, which is still smoldering.
This thing will continue to smolder for months if we don't get significant rains. There's great big juniper trees, and there's big stump holes that there's fire might be 3-4 feet underground, that there's no way to put those out except a lot of moisture.
Even experienced firefighters said the damage done was worse than they had ever imagined it would be. To those returning to what was once home, it was nothing short of a nightmare.
I had 4 bathrooms in here. It was just beautiful.
For Bruce Curtis, today's trip home was anything but beautiful.
And I had a leather chair and a leather couch, and television and stuff was on this floor. Bed, there's nothing but, the only thing that's left is the metal stuff. And that's my girlfriend's car. That was a nice little Honda Accord. That's totally gone. And this up here was I had a monster truck. It was a...
Curtis says he left so much behind Monday night because he really didn't think the fire was headed this way.
you don't worry about a freight train that's going in the opposite direction. You know, you just don't think. You just, you know, I don't know if you have the capability of thinking about how bad something like this could be. I can't. I've never seen anything like this. I still don't know where my dogs are.
He was so sure that everything would be okay that he left his 2 Airedales and their newborn pups behind.
That's my Airedales, my dogs and 2 puppies.
With everything now gone, Curtis says he doesn't want to stay here in this Mogollon Rim country.
I may go up to Idaho, someplace where it's a little greener and a little wetter. I don't know what else I can do.
At night, the Battle of the Blaze continued, both on land and in the air.
The Dude Fire is now 81 hours old, but it is by no means tiring itself out. In one area especially, the blaze gives new meaning to the term wildfire. This is the eastern edge of the fire, the part that's been the trouble spot, where high winds have pushed the flames hundreds, even thousands of acres ahead at a time. Well, tonight, firefighters believe they're getting a handle on it, getting a line around it that they hope will hold. But as you can see, there's still an awful lot out there that's burning. The next victim was very nearly the Baptist camp near Tonto Estates. Slurry drops like this one, and the hard work of this hotshot crew stopped the flames less than half a mile from the camp.
Looks like the surface of the moon up there. It's pretty bad.
But that's the forest. Tonight, the Baptist camp itself stands, untouched by fire. Forest Service spokesman David Olson says that is a tribute to the dedication of the men and women who are in their 4th day of their battle with the Dude.
It was the efforts of those particular crew members. They had about a 10-acre spot fire. It was very windy, very hot, and just through very hard work for a short period of time, they were able to put a line around it, and this evening it's looking pretty good.
As night fell, smoke poured from new hotspots on the Mogollon Rim as slurry bombers and helicopters made run after run to stop it.
Well, the old Bore-8 bombers, twin engines.
All along Highway 260, people gathered to watch the show.
Curiosity, no doubt. I've been all over this country up here, and it's pretty sad to stand by and see all the big pine trees burned down.
In Christopher Creek, residents were put on alert to be ready to evacuate on a 15-minute notice.
Ready to go? Got my bags packed?
Inside Joe's Market, things were a little tense.
It makes me feel shaky and panicky. I don't know, we're alive and healthy.
But owner Joe Armstead said even if the worst happens, not all would be lost.
We can rebuild.
Also put on evacuation notice, the R-Bar-C Boy Scout Ranch.
We did voluntarily have our cubs go home rather than to have to be evacuated.
Griffin says he has hope that his new scout ranch will survive.
My personal feeling on the fire is that with the quality of firefighters that we have on the fire, the type of equipment that we have on the fire, that we should be concerned, yes, but scared to death, no.
All of the people in Payson have really been sitting around wondering what can we do for the firemen.
Dr. Mark Ivy came up with an idea. He asked everyone in town to bake a pie or two for the firefighters.
Well, then it just started mushrooming. And before 6:30 that Friday evening, there were over 200 pies.
The timing was great. After 5 days of firefighting, crews needed a morale boost, and the pies were delivered just in time for dessert.
It was a feeding frenzy, I guess is the best way to describe it.
There were all kinds in every shape and size, fresh from ovens of Payson residents. Their way of saying thank you to the men and women who had fought so bravely and saved so much.
Everyone was scared, everyone was worried that the fire was going to actually come down through here. And yet, in spite of that, everyone came together to help those who couldn't be in their homes.
Firefighters had 80% of the fire contained. They had built a line of defense on all but one side.
Along the eastern boundary of the fire, small pockets of flame still chewed up ground cover and covered roads with thick smoke.
Fence up. Go back to work.
These wary firefighters from New Mexico struggled to their feet after a quick lunch. Much of the work now, mopping up. Stumps and logs can continue to smolder for months if not dug up and smothered in water.
There's still some spots on it, hot spots, so I had to scrape them off in order to let the log cool down.
All the tough work here is a little bit easier with all the support given from people in the Mogollon Rim area.
Kind of, feel happy, how, they appreciate, what we are doing.
The opposite end of the fire was contained, but the battle was not over yet.
This northwest corner of the fire is one of the top priorities for helicopter crews and their 300-gallon buckets of water. The work they're doing looks spectacular, but it's also very dangerous. Winds can kick up and swirl around the helicopter, and a lot of the terrain is steep and treacherous, but getting close is the only way to build a line around the fire.
We're going to have to go ahead and get some fuel, and we don't have a replacement plane, so just keep...
5-foot Cisco and Shamrock truck a day. Quite a bit of food.
What's that?
It's probably 25,000, 30,000 pounds a day.
Of food?
Of food, sure.
All of that gave firefighters an edge on the fire, an edge that helped them save the Tonto fish hatchery.
Well, my concern right now is the fish are alive, but...
Hatchery manager Gene Akamoto returned to check on the fish for the first time since being evacuated on Wednesday.
These fish look excellent. They look a little hungry, but they're in excellent shape.
All of the outside raceways and most of the 1.2 million trout were spared by the fire, even though it came close enough to destroy 2 buildings.
I can express my feelings, but it's unbelievable that the hatchery actually survived the fire.
Inside, the young fingerlings were also in good shape, and workers gave them a well-deserved dinner and did some maintenance.
Well, all our frozen food has thawed out.
Akamoto and the others also live here at the hatchery, and even though the fire passed within feet of their homes, all were still standing.
We are real proud of the hot shots for saving all the residences, and we congratulate their efforts.
But with so much damage done to the surrounding forests, clean, clear water that the hatchery depends on may now be hard to find.
The water would just run right off the surface and not recharge our spring at all, and it's going to really hurt our hatchery system here.
An evening thunderstorm darkened the skies and the mood of the crews. Rain would help put the fire out. Lightning would fuel it.
The rains began shortly after 6, but they were scattered, light in some places, heavy in others, but nothing that could be considered a bucket drop by Mother Nature. In fact, the effect may be closer to a drop in the bucket, since fierce winds, the firefighters' enemy, came with the rain.
They didn't have near the kind of downdrafts with sheer force like we had Tuesday, but still enough that it's swirling around a little, and the wind up there is still blowing from east to west, which is the wrong way.
In fact, when the rain ended, the plume of smoke due north of the base camp grew to a huge size in a matter of minutes. Hundreds of evacuees from 6 neighboring communities were told today that they will be able to return to their homes tomorrow. The Forest Service says Mother Nature is not raining on those folks' parade homeward tonight. According to the service, the folks going home tomorrow live miles from the nearest fire lines that are now burned and cold, with no fuel left to burn.
When it's cold and black, then there's not very much risk of the fire breaking that line and running towards the houses. So it's a reasonable, very minimal risk to let those folks back in their home.
While the Forest Service says 90% containment is good enough for those 6 communities, people like Leslie Southard, whose homes are close to or within the fire line, must wait.
The nearest they've come so far is that when the fire is declared under control, then they will let us know. That might be next week.
So as the sun set tonight over the base camp, everyone became a little more cautious with their optimism, following the brief reminder that the sky does not always keep its fire to itself.
100 miles away from the fire line, friends and family gathered to say goodbye to those who had died in a fire that hungered for more than just land.
They were here to honor the memory of Curtis Springfield. He was one of 5 inmate firefighters who died this week in the line of duty. He was serving time for a crime he committed, but he was willing to risk his life for society. In the state prison system, he was inmate number 57718. But to his family and friends, he was a 24-year-old man who got off track for a while.
Many of you are justly proud of a young man who a few years ago we may have wondered, will he make it? Will he ever amount to anything? Well, he did. He made it.
Curtis Springfield died a hero during a fierce firestorm in the Tonto National Forest near Payson. Those who knew him well say the prison firefighting program meant a great deal to Curtis, and they are proud of his sacrifice.
Sacrifices made a number of times during the 2 years of fighting forest fires. And now this week, the ultimate sacrifice of laying down his life to help fight that devastating Jude forest fire.
Tonight, his fellow inmate firefighters were allowed to leave their cells and honor the memory of their fallen comrade. Tonight, the Springfield family and Kurt's prison family share a special bond. They will all miss their son and brother.
We are proud of him. He was doing things, helping others, That's the way we put it, We are going to miss him, but he'll always be with us.
In Tucson, another member of that fire crew was laid to rest. Friends and family remember James Ellis in a small service. He died just 1 week before he was to be released. James Ellis was 34 years old.
When we walked in, it was, like you've been holding your breath for a week, and the relief came when we finally got in here.
Pat Watson sits in her front yard, remembering what it was like when the evacuation was lifted.
It was kind of like everybody was having a big party.
Yet the excitement of the day couldn't push out the memories of the last time she saw her home.
Standing on that step right over there and seeing the flames up there that looked to me like they were 100 feet in the air, and I thought at that point that this place was gone. And then to come back later and see the flames are gone, the trees are still there, and this house is still here.
The danger was over. The day that so many had waited for had finally come. Homecoming.
It resembled a parade.
We're at the end of the water tank road.
As residents were cleared at checkpoints, they wasted no time returning home.
We're all happy and we're thankful that we have a house here yet.
Virginia and Robert Wachner and dog Prince were evacuated from their Whispering Pines home on Tuesday.
Really unbelievable.
As soon as they walked in the door, the phone was ringing with friends who had worried about the couple all week.
I know you have, or you wouldn't have called.
The Wachners say they now have much more respect for forest fires.
I can tell you that I, for one, was not one that wanted to leave. They more or less had to force me out. But I can see now that they had their reasons, and I just didn't understand.
Throughout much of this rim country, life is slowly getting back to normal.
In Tano Village, Tom Melbourne helped his mom move back into her home, still standing, untouched by flames. Mom, Pat Browner, was relieved and exhausted.
Well, I'll wait till I get this all done, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to cry.
The fire was 90% contained. The focus had shifted. Recovery was the concern now. State officials came to survey the damages. Their sentiments matched that of all Arizonans.
Fire
Makes me sick inside.
Governor Rose Mofford flew over the Dude Fire area this morning. She saw a lush forest reduced to charcoal and ash, and the site of the historic Zane Grey cabin in ruins.
It is sad. It's very sad because that's history. That's the West.
Governor Mofford joined Arizona U.S. Senators Dennis DeConcini and John McCain and Congressman John Kyle for a Forest Service briefing on the fire at the Payson Airport. The prediction? Full containment by Tuesday. Senators McCain and DeConcini have asked President Bush to approve federal emergency assistance funds for the area.
We're told today that it had tentatively been denied, but General Owens of the National Guard says that is not final because they don't have the full assessment made yet.
I think our job is to do whatever we can to see it restored as quickly as possible.
Congressman Kyle went straight to the base camp after the briefing. The Dude Fire is in Kyle's district. He says he wanted to thank the firefighters, National Guardsmen, and volunteers like Payson High School student Michelle Butler.
Well, it's an experience you really don't want to ever have, but it's one that will stick with you all your life.
Yeah.
Thanks for helping out. When you talk to the people here and realize the kind of effort that they put in, you have to feel good about what the people did and the way this community came together to support the volunteers here. It's too bad it takes a disaster like this to bring people together, but they sure have come together, and that makes us feel good.
In Phoenix, friends and relatives came to St. Augustine's Church to say goodbye to Sandra Joanne Bachman. She was 43 and had served the Department of Corrections for 10 years, 2 years as a supervisor of the inmate fire crew. The surviving members of that crew were allowed to attend so that they could say goodbye to their friend and co-worker. This was also the day James Denny was laid to rest. Denny had proudly served the inmate firefighting program, a program he said changed his life.
This is the best program that ever happened for me or for anybody else that I've seen.
I wanted to give them something. I wanted to give them a gift.
Vicki Blair had watched the week-long fire battle and wondered what she could do for the firefighters. The answer came in the form of a song.
I wrote it in a half hour, recorded it in an hour, and then listened to it for about an hour and decided to take it over to a radio station and see if they would do it.
They did, and when the song played, the normally bustling base camp fell silent.
You're the unspoken heroes of a land that's truly blessed.
They had opened all their car doors and listened to it, and some had tears in their eyes, and it made them cry. And a lot of people in this town heard it, and they cried.
Well, our acreage is the same. We're at 28,480 acres.
Containment. The week-long battle was finally over. The firefighters had won out in the end. Now they could return the hospitality they had enjoyed from Payson and the surrounding communities.
These buses normally carry firefighters either eager or weary, but today is different.
The town has given us such outstanding cooperation and really its affection. You know, you see thank you firefighter signs and the red ribbons everywhere and the pies in camp and the donations from Safeway and just everything in the world that we thought we'd try to pay them back a little bit and give them a flavor of what fire camp is, our instant city.
More than 100 people climb aboard, fire crews of an unlikely sort, here to find out more about the 2,500 men and women who filled the last week of their lives.
The next person behind you with the plastic will take a whack, take a step, whack, and pretty soon you start forming a little path. So you have kind of a basic line cut.
Dave Olson is one tour guide.
Right behind us here is what's called the supply unit. The supply unit has a responsibility of ensuring that there are Pulaskis and McLeods and shovels.
And what do you think of this?
Oh, I think it's great. I got out here yesterday on my own and videoed all of this. And I thought, God, I've never seen anything like it, where they put a city together out here in the middle of the Tules. Just, it's amazing.
The visitors find a city of tents and trailers where food is served and clothes washed. After an hour, they climb back aboard those buses with a new understanding of the business of fighting wildfires.
This chance in a lifetime, I think, seeing this once in a lifetime.
Pretty impressed?
Really impressed.
What I saw was a city. It's a city. It's self-contained, and I didn't think I'd see that. I just thought I'd see a little bunch of firemen here and firemen there, and they came out here, and there was thousands of them.
It had been a long and sometimes frightening week for Payson area residents. They were horrified when they learned the fire had killed, worried when they heard 60 homes had been destroyed, wondering if they would be the next evacuees. Through it all, there was one place they could turn for answers.
In a small town like this, where everybody is involved when a big disaster like this hits, they can't wait for the next newscast on television. They can't wait for the next daily newspaper. They want to know what's going on now. And that has meant KMOG.
Well, the Dude Fire Area Command has issued what hopefully will be their last incident status summary on the lightning-caused fire, which was first reported on Monday. And that's if the fire is completely contained at 8 o'clock this evening as expected.
Carl Kurtz's turn at KMOG's mic comes near the end of the fire, and the end of an amazing week for this tiny country music station that normally broadcasts from sunrise to midnight.
immediately decided that we would go to 24 hours a day. We also decided that we would do away with regular programming, that this became the ultimate thing, the information that the people had to get. We also immediately stayed at the station, put a mobile home behind the station, and just lived here. Slept when we could, but just made it like a command headquarters.
KMOG quickly became Payson's community billboard. Officials called in to give out information. Residents called and listened to find out about the battle and about their homes.
Throughout the week, Payson area residents gave constant support. Red ribbons reminded residents of the battle and the men and women who were fighting it. There were signs of thanks, some making bold statements, others simple. The message was clear. The firefighters had won the battle and the hearts of all Arizonans.